announcement. We are open to have private sessions. I am opening new dates on my schedule. We have a brand new automated booking system. No more long waits for confirming the booking. That's right, everyone. Automated booking system is here. Go to andrewbartzis.com and look forward to seeing you in a private session.
Welcome everyone. Today we have something truly special to share with all those out there on a path of spiritual and physical wellness. First, for all the amazing women out there, we have the Divine Feminine Package. This package is designed to honor and celebrate the sacred feminine within each and every one of us. And let's not forget the incredible benefits of the HIFU treatment included in this package. HIFU, or High Intensity Focused Ultrasound, is a breakthrough for vaginal rejuvenation, increased sensitivity, say goodbye to dryness and urinary incontinence.
Absolutely, Laura. And included in this package is 2 days of our complete combined healing therapy system, along with the rejuvenation HIFU treatment. We've also included a special meditation to reconnect your sacred femininity. It's a beautiful opportunity for you to nourish your inner goddess. And as a bonus, we are offering a complimentary head, neck, and shoulder massage to further enhance your relaxation and well-being. Plus, you will also receive a comprehensive body composition scanning for posture and composition analysis. It's also about empowering you to understand and embrace your unique journey.
Revitalize your inner and outer well-being with our Divine Feminine Package. It's an incredible opportunity to experience deep healing and reconnect with your feminine power.
Trust us, it's worth every penny for this transformation and empowerment you'll experience. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Talking Bigfoot Show. So I'm joined by my two co-hosts. I have the Laura Massey,
Hi, everybody.
we have the Galactic historian Andrew Bartis.
Hello, everybody.
How are you doing today, Andrew?
Good. Waiting to talk lots of Bigfoot on the Talking Bigfoot show.
Yes. So our two guests today, we have Deborah Hatswell from the Being Believe Research. Hello, Deborah.
Hi, how are you doing?
Great to have you on. I'm doing very well. And we have Michele Meiners from the Paranormal Rangers. Hello, Michele.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you again.
And nice to have you on again. So we'll start with speaking to you, Deborah, a little bit about what you do in the backstory of what got you into this, because I do know you've had 40 years experience reporting the unexplained. So if you'd like to just start how it went and so on.
My first, I think, interaction with what we would class as the Bigfoot creature happened in 1982. I have had paranormal experiences as a child, but I never put the two events together for some reason. I was 15 at the time, and I lived in an ordinary town in the northwest of England. Nothing, I wasn't out there in the wilds or anything like that. Not the sort of place that you should be seeing anything like him. It was an old country park, and it had been kind of, when it gets left to rack and ruin and the council buy it and they don't do anything with it. And it's been like that for years. It had just been left, and like the laurels were and the rhododendrons were like 40 foot high. And we used to, if we didn't go in school, we used to sneak in there. So between the old mansion and like a sensory garden, there was just this, we used to call it the Ivy Den. It was like all mixed in, and we were in there. I'd sneaked in there with my friend. And we were just waiting for school to end. It was a really nice day, about this time of year, same weather. And we lay on the ground talking to each other like this. And I just noticed a really quick movement in the bushes. And I thought it was going to be a teacher. And we were in big trouble for not being in school. Or that it would maybe be one of the boys that we knew that would go like, wow, and kind of scare us, that kind of thing. And it wasn't. I looked, and this thing looked at me. It was kind of in the greenery. And as I looked at it, it made eye contact with me, and I made eye contact with it. And it kind of leant forward like this. And I don't know why I did this. I acted primarily, no thought went into it. I pushed my friend really hard, so like she'd be down on the ground. And I got up and I ran. I was running, and I looked back to see if he was following me. And he wasn't. And she was running in the opposite direction, thankfully. And he just kind of melted back into the green. It was just like, it was almost like the shadows and the green just took him. And he was gone, and that was it. That was the moment. It was just that moment in time. And I've for every day since, I've been like looking for an answer as to what he could be. But to look at him, most people say to me that it was probably a homeless man. Or it was somebody playing a prank in a suit. Well, in 1982 in England, there wasn't a whole lot of Bigfoot talk. I didn't even believe in the Loch Ness Monster. Abominable snowman, we might have heard of that. But not really anything Bigfoot wise. So I knew he wasn't a caveman, and I knew he wasn't an ape, and I knew he wasn't a human. He was kind of all those things together. I sent Laura a picture of him earlier, and that was done many, many years later. But he looked, the closest I've ever been able to get me really would be Heidelbergensis, and they were in the UK many, thousands of years ago. But the fossil record says that they weren't hairy, and I don't understand how you know that from just a fossil bone. But he was hairy. He was covered in hair. Not his face. His face was like a leathery skin. He had a really pronounced brow ridge. Lots of muscles. I concentrated on this area. His muscles looked like he could have just bit through a bone and it would have just snapped. So he had human teeth, no canines or anything like that. And just like human lips, normal lips, but his nose was flat like a boxer. And he just had these eyes, and he looked shocked to see me. I was definitely primal when I saw him, but he looked shocked, like we'd both given each other a shock.
Holy shit, you see me.
Yes,
You saw me, oh my God.
And I wouldn't say he was like ancient or anything like that. Probably if he was a human boy, I'd have said about 19, 20. So not a young boy and not a, he had a bit of bum fluff on his chin, but no grey to him or anything like that. And he was just really, really dark brown, very, very dark brown. But the sun was shining at us and it was almost red, like a red setter where the sun caught it. And that was it. It was incredibly muscular, really, really, really thick muscles across here. And he just looks a bit slack-jawed. He just looks a bit, as we say in the UK, a bit gobsmacked. He was like, and I was like, and I just ran. And I've got a bit of missing time. I remember running and I remember looking back and knowing that he wasn't coming for me. And I just kept going. And then I came to what was like, yeah, that's him there. That's him. That's as close as I could get to what I saw that day. Very, very similar. I'd say his muscles around his eyes should be a bit wider and the muscles around his jaw should be a little bit wider. But Alex Evans did that for me. I spent the rest of my life trying to find out what he could be. And it was only, I heard about the Sykesville monster. So I'd heard about Bigfoot by then, because obviously I'd got onto the CB radios and I'd get on long wave radio and I'd ask people, and then MySpace come along and I'd get on there, and then Friends Reunited and I'd jump on there. Anywhere I could try and find another witness in the UK, and I was finding them. Not all of the time, maybe one every 3 or 4 years or something, or I'd find something in an old text or in a newspaper, and that I'd be like, that could be it, that could be the same or similar thing. And then probably about 2005, 2006, I got the laptop at home and I'm trying to explain to somebody. I'd come forward in the UK and I'd explain what I saw. And in the newspaper, they just ridiculed me. They just put woman sees caveman in the UK. And I just thought, what was the point? What was the point in being so brave and coming forward? So I knew that if I couldn't get this picture out of my head of what I saw, that was always going to happen. So I spoke to a lady called Alex Evans, and she sits down with Bigfoot witnesses in the US, and she helps to draw them. She'll do a photo of it first, and then she'll draw them for you, and you can change it. And I was very lucky when I met her. And she said to me, go online and find something that looks like it, something similar that we can start to work from. I was dazed. I was at it. Just nothing looked right at all. And then I don't like saying PTSD. That's not fair because I've never been to war, but that's what it felt like. I just scrolled up this day and there was a photograph of the Sykesville monster. And it was like, it just sucked me back right to that moment. I threw the laptop on the floor. I was crying. And my husband's like, what's wrong? And I was like, him, there he is. That's him. That's him. That's who I saw that day. That's who I saw that day. But I can't, so I'm looking and it's saying it's in Sykesville in America and it's 2 years after mine. And I'm thinking, well, I can't be right, can I? Because if he's in America and then I'm thinking, yeah, but come on, Deb, no, he's not a human being on the earth, looks the same as another human being. We all look different, whatever country we come from. And then fate intervened. I had an accident, I broke my arm and my leg really badly in an accident. And I was in a wheelchair then for quite a long time, about 5 or 6 years. But there was an 18-month period where I was laid flat on the bed and I couldn't do anything. And I'm not the type of person who can't do anything. And Mark said to me, Debbie, you've either got to put it away forever. I hadn't took my children camping. I mean, the things I could tell you that I'd cut off from my life, because I never walked in a forest again, never. And I camped every weekend with my dad. I fished every river in England before I saw him. Never again, never again. And I robbed my children of it as well, because I thought he was behind every tree. I thought he was going to come get me at home. The fear was awful. And it wasn't until I broke through that fear that I started to connect in what some people would call psychically. But I started to receive messages, but that was a good 30, 35 years later after that event.
Incredible. So, Michele, do you want to tell the listeners a bit about yourself as well and how you got into the paranormal investigation field? You're on mute. There we go.
That would help, wouldn't it?
There we go.
I was saying about 6.5 years ago, I had the opportunity to work on a couple of projects up in the Uinta Basin. and did some investigations around a certain paranormal activity that occurred on this one particular ranch that I was on. And I personally did not ask for these experiences. I wasn't looking for opportunities to see phenomena. I was asked to assist in a managing a ranch and such. And right from the get-go, I started to have these experiences up there, and beginning with orbs, and never seen an orb until on my birthday, May 30th, 2016. It was the first time I saw a giant blue orb. And it had some kind of intelligence to it, because once I started to say, oh my gosh, you're an orb, it completely like disappeared and went into some kind of its own little vortex. And so I started having more and more experiences, and I'm thinking people around me were not. And I'm like, why me? Why me? And I thought maybe I was being targeted in some way or form. And so I just kind of went with the flow and just started having all these extraordinary phenomena experiences out there. And, to the point, this is kind of be a little hilarious, because you learn this from shows or just, people just dealing with what they've seen. I bought 2 Mylar blankets and had my partner come on the ranch with me and wearing one of these Mylar blankets. And he just laughed at me and says, Michele, this is not going to prevent you from having more experiences. I said, I know, but it's for me thinking I'm being protected, And the more, so I put away the blanket and started to deal with the phenomena, and I seen everything. I was even visited by entities not from this world, and started working with a group of people. And there came a point where I became very paranoid, very scared, because I brought this phenomena home with me to my home. And I had a son who was very much into this type of phenomena, and I brought him with me to this particular ranch, and he had similar experience. And to this day, he'll say, I wish I never had gone, because it's affected his life, because we didn't understand the hitchhiker knowledge of that these things can follow you home if you're not aware. And so, when Debbie had her experiences and as she was breaking down, it's because she hadn't realized within herself that these things are real, and that maybe our minds are going crazy. And I had to go through that experience. And the more interviews I did, the more I came to find out that a lot of people hadn't even experienced these things, and they theoretically did not want to open up about their experiences due to the fact that people would have looked at them in their community as crazy. And even you tell yourself you're crazy. Am I really seeing this? Is this being suggested from somewhere else? Technology, whatever. I mean, there are those technologies out there that can influence the mind greatly. So you start to manifest things in your life like, I don't really want to deal with this. So you try to put it to the side. But when things start to happen in your daily life, in your home, around you, or places you go, and you start having these bizarre experiences from cars appearing and almost hitting you, there's a lot of a storyline here. 6.5 years of being on that particular project. It wasn't until that I got acquainted with Blindfrog Ranch. The Mystery of Blindfrog Ranch is now its show on Discovery Channel. The gentleman who owns the ranch became a really good friend of mine, and we started to do a lot of tours and bring people up. That's his one thing, is bring people up to the ranch. And there's some healing things that occurred there on his ranch, and I started to see things. And we started talking a lot about his interesting story. And it's one that's, crazy. It's a crazy story, but isn't everything that we experience with the phenomena that way? And so it wasn't until that as I was getting these experiences, I was asked to be on a couple of shows, that I started to realize that, people in the mainstream community were wanting answers. They wanted to feel safe. They wanted to tell their stories. They wanted to share in the phenomena. And then on one occasion, two of the rangers, Jonathan Dover, came into town, and I was introduced to him through my business partner, who happens to be a cast member on Skinwalker Ranch, Jim Morse. And we went out to dinner, and we had these commonalities. And from a Native American perspective, it really, really put me into a protective state. And
Yes.
the more he talked about this being our cultural norm, that we've been dealing with this phenomena for millennia, that there's nothing to fear here, and that there's just another community that we can't see within our own scope. So that's how and then I was asked, because of my background in investigative reporting up in the Uinta Basin, and in my background in my past, to come on, and I was offered a position to be with the Paranormal Rangers as their female investigative reporter. So that's how I became a ranger.
You're not crazy. You're absolutely
You're not crazy.
So
No.
when I was
absolutely
younger,
perfect. You are made.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you know what my grandmother told me? And I'm going to tell it you. Thousands and thousands of people had to fall in love for you to be here right now at this moment, and you are absolutely perfect just the way you are.
Well, thank you, Deb. I appreciate that. But it was a journey. It was a journey to get to this place, It took many, many years, and we're still exploring and investigating, and had, 2 or 3 sightings of the Bigfoot. So those are experiences you'll never forget.
And that's it. So when I was younger, I had loads of different paranormal experiences, seeing UFOs in the sky, seeing ancestors, seeing ghosts. And it got to the point where I told my mum the first time, but because of her reaction, I never said a word after. So I just became silent, and all the experience I had the next morning, I wouldn't tell a word to anyone until I met people who had the open mind, who shared the common experience like I did later on in my life. And this is why it's so important for you, Michele, and you, Deborah, spreading this message so people can come out and start being truthful about their own experiences as well. Because that's what we need. We need people sharing our own experiences so we can all share this common thread of, yes, it is real. And the more people come out and do these shows, the better. So I had that silence for so fucking long. Then when I found and found all these groups, I was like, it just came fully out of me where I wanted to share all these experiences. Finally, someone can fucking listen to me and understand
Someone
me.
understands, That's my job. That's what I do. I find witnesses find me. I sit down with them and I speak to them about there's an event that they've got in touch with me for. So I speak to them about that. So that might be one person who's had this event. I talk to them about it and I say, take me back. When was the first time that you remember something strange or something you cannot explain? And it's genuinely normally in childhood. But I also get parents that get in touch because the children are experiencing things and they did as a child. And they don't want shutting down like their parents did to them. Sorry. So
you guys are talking about experiences that challenged family members.
Yes.
One of my first memories was being fed yogurt and a negative reaction to yogurt. And I remember at a young age, maybe 7, 8, 9, somewhere in that range, telling my mom, I remember you feeding me. It's impossible for you to remember that. And then there was another situation. I was over at my aunt's house. My grandmother would go visit her every Monday. And for some reason, I was with her. And I was out in her backyard, and I started seeing colors, shapes, geometries. And I came in and I said, I'm seeing all this stuff. What do I do with it? And they said, you put it away and you don't tell anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Because there were other family members that had that happen to them 30, 40, 50, and 70 years ago.
Yeah.
It was a family secret. And the Greeks in this, the family that I were in, you can't speak about this to anyone.
No.
So I turned it off, but I also remembered I could turn it on. Okay. And then there was the most unique experiences. Every night when I was going to sleep, I lived in a house that still had knob and tube wiring. Are you guys familiar with what that is?
Yeah, old
It's,
electric.
unshielded, it's an unshielded wire. It's basically a wire with thread around it. It's unshielded. That goes over a porcelain tube and it spreads wire to the whole house. Well, where the knob and tube wiring is essentially in my room, right over where you have the window, and then 1 foot away from the ceiling where the window is, or 2 feet away from the ceiling is where the knob and tube wire is running through the ceiling. Every night there would be a flash where that knob was. And I know that now because I used to go up into there as many times as I could. And I'm like, this is where my room is, and this is where this flash of light comes into my room every night.
Yeah.
Come and visit me. And I would watch it go all the way through every cord and every plug in the house. And sometimes it would take me on a ride through the wires out of the house and into other houses too.
Right.
How do you tell that to a father who was an electrical engineer? You don't.
And how do you get into that wire is my transformation, as a child. Yeah.
Do you ever get shopping carts that give you a static shock, or when you kiss them? So energy, you're an energy battery that's just sucking it up as you go. Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. That's why I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's very rare that I speak to somebody who's the same as me. It's exactly the same. My watches don't work.
Watches don't work for me either. It's really funny. Now, another thing.
I don't wear them either.
I've been for a long time that shopping carts are the most toxic environments in the world because of the mindset that people have when they go to shop.
Yeah.
Some are in lack, some are in gluttony, some are in angry, some have all sorts of emotions, and they just retain that energy. Okay?
Yeah. That's my job. That's what I do. I work with people who I think they just want an answer. And like yourself, you said they told the parents maybe early on, and the parents have shut them down. So they've had to go through like preschool and then teens and into the 20s and into the 30s. And they get given these medical diagnoses of you've got anxiety, you've got this and you've got that, and it's a personality disorder, it's a mental illness, all of these things. And those things are valid. But I'm speaking to people who don't have a mental illness. What they're feeling and what they're picking up on around them is natural energy coming off other people. And like you said yourself, when I would imagine that you're not great in crowds and you don't mind your own company. And that's kind of like me. And it gets a bit much for me if I'm in a busy city. I can feel everything coming off everybody, and not knowing what that was as a child makes me feel different to everybody else. So
I grew up in the restaurant industry, so I was overexposed to large volumes of people, and I had to learn to deal with my psychic sense and turn it on and get better with it. You could have 100 people waiting in line. You could have 10 people waiting on. You could have 5 people who are pissed off at the lunch that they got, and all that would be overwhelming until I learned to go, no, you're not affecting me anymore. And it was one of the most powerful personal training tools I had was growing up in that environment and being able to control I call this smelling the mouse fart next door. So many people are over vigilant. They are literally smelling the mouse fart next door in the metaphor of psychic experiences. Everything means something. Everything is directly affecting me when in fact it's just a random mouse fart next door.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
That overvigilance has driven an industry of people to have these things that are cure-alls, but they cure nothing because the overvigilance is the cause of it. And so many people become overvigilant because they enter that fear state and have no idea how to break it.
Yeah, that was me. That was me in a nutshell.
The things that scared me in my younger youth was watching what was being done to other family members by other external sources. Did they try to target me at times? Sure. But I also learned how to make sure I did something that if they came back, it would cost them something.
Right.
Okay. A war of attrition. You're going to do this. I'm going to do this. You're going to do this. I'm going to do this. And I made sure with my creative energies, without becoming a barbaric response thing.
Mhm.
We've lost you, Andrew.
Have we lost you?
Those
no.
energies
He's
that
back.
were being projected. I'm back up. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
hear you now. That
Say-
last few seconds.
Say that again.
I learned how to stop the projections from the external sources using friends and family as the conduit of projection. So I could forgive the friends and family and go to the source of what was making them do things.
That would be much easier for many children who don't know how to do that.
Yep.
I just didn't know how to do that. I didn't have the skills. I just had to learn it the hard way, unfortunately.
I attributed it to the restaurant industry, being able to refine my skill. I really do. I give it to that, the overexposure to people and the requirement to learn the nuances of what I was doing and the consequences of overlooking.
And the amount of people who are pissed off who come eat is it's probably about 80% of people who come in are just pissed off wanting to eat, and you're there taking their order. And
Right.
I was in the restaurant
Toxic.
industry as well for
Yeah.
16 years.
Yeah.
So I had a similar experience there.
I mean, even back of house, when you get back of house, it's a manic environment to be in.
Yeah.
It really, really is. And I couldn't do it anymore, me. I just like, I just can't. I'm just going to have to work for myself. And I just took the gamble. I just couldn't do it. I'm awful in towns and I'm awful in crowds. I'm all right on grass. I'm fine. And I have to ground myself often. I just don't like being around big crowds of people.
Andrew, what age did you learn? I mean, being around people, and we call them toxic people here.
Yeah.
And when you pick up that energy, and you don't know how to displace the energy somewhere else. How old were you when you decided that I need to remove myself from this situation? Because that's where the paranoia sets in, when we don't know how to put it somewhere else.
There are two learning phases. At first in the restaurant, I was dishwasher, pick up the stuff, the garbage of the energy, the worst. Okay.
Okay.
And then once I got trusted enough, I could collect money. And it's the journey of going from the leftovers to the collecting of money that gave me an ability to go, I'm being paid and I don't have to take anything else on, which then transferred over into age 10, 11, 12, 13 of a very selective way of going, I accept your love, but what's behind your perverted love, I don't have to. And I didn't have to have outer words for that, which was the toughest part as a child. You want to be truthful, but I learned by age 7, I had to have my inner world and let it be my inner world and still be a human and enjoy living. I just didn't need to express my inner world to anyone because I didn't trust them, because all of the experiences that I had said, they were shut down, or I would say things that would perplex them to the point where they would get afraid of me. And I didn't want that. So I stopped explaining and I kept my world, and their world. And I learned to adapt to being in both without it traumatizing me. So by age 13, I had developed a system of like line item veto of what energies I would accept from a person. And on a subconscious level, meaning I didn't have to actively choose anymore.
Mine's completely the opposite of that. I mean, I had no choice of anything as I was growing. It was I'm probably in my late 30s before I realised how to set a boundary and how to use my will to stop it and shut it down. So for me, it's the complete opposite. I didn't know anything as a child. I was just went from experience to experience to experience and somehow survived them. But I did get the sideway looks, and I never got invited to parties, and people never knocked on for me. I'd go and knock on for them, and people thought, oh, a bit weird. And they still think them a bit weird now, but now I wear it like as a badge of pride. That it's not something I should be ashamed of. But I come from a long line of people who have been ashamed of their abilities. So it's ingrained within me. And then you've got the mix of I'm Irish on both sides. So then you've got the church, and everything that puts on top of you, and you basically communing with demons and things like that. I was lucky I didn't get any of that. I didn't get churched as a child, but some of my family members did, and were made to feel that they were sinning. It was an actual sin to see and experience. So as a child at home that can't sleep because things are coming in and out of your room, terrifying things that you don't understand.
Right.
And you try and explain that to two really hard-working parents who are absolutely knackered, and society's done a number of them. And it's much easier to just say, well, it was just a dream. And you think, I know it was not a dream. I just felt that I was really inconvenient. I just shut down. I just thought, I'm not telling any. I remember saying to a friend at school, what do you do when that man comes in your room at night? And she looked at me like I was an alien. And I knew then that I'd made a fatal mistake. And I just shut down. And when I was 16, my parents moved to a beautiful part of the country, in the countryside. No, there's nowhere I was going. Nowhere. And I moved into what we call a high rise, a high set of flats, because I thought, you can't get me here. You just can't get me here. And then I started drinking, because that was the only thing that had made me sleep at night.
Wow.
You know, so for me, it was trauma learning. Like, it was completely the opposite for me. I had to learn that if I didn't put these boundaries in place, then things were just going to drain me till I was sick, and I was ill, and I was depressed, and my life was awful. I was an awful human being. All I cared about was money. All I cared about. And then I had that accident, and I realised that my children were what I should be concentrating upon, and the very small things in life. Because when you can't do them anymore, you really suddenly realise what you've lost. So for me, it was all it was awful. So I was in my late 30s. It was a really, really awful life that I led. And luckily I changed, and I've learned now that I know I can walk into a dark forest and it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. I can walk into a house where they poltergeist active. It doesn't bother me at all. Because nothing, I don't fear anything. I'm not scared of anything. The only thing that I'm scared of is karma.
So for me, church, the Greek Orthodox Church, was a massive positive as well as somewhat negative experience. So they made me an altar boy when I was like 5, 6. I was like one of the youngest altar boys out there, along with some other overachieving Greek parents that put their 5 years old and 6 years old, along with 9, 12, 15, and 17-year-olds.
Wow.
And so I would show up 7:45 in the morning, 6, sometimes 7, to do first service, which is in Greek, second service, which is English, and third service, which is half Greek and half English. Okay? And then we would have an off time, and then we'd go downstairs, and there would be a social gathering, and we'd leave around 2:30, 3 o'clock every Sunday. And that was very religious. We would do that out of a thing. But what I discovered is that's where I learned to see real spirit. That's where I could tell if the priest's prayers were working, who was there out of tradition, how to look into the audience and go, oh, that person is suffering something. And I could see the spirit coming and just trying to relieve them a little bit. I could see the nuances of the different forms of faith. That was a massive influence to me, and it was something that helped me deal with the traumatic demons that were affecting my family. Okay? Ancestral energies from the old country that were causing people to tear each other at their throats. Okay? Yeah, I had traumas, and I still have traumas. I mean, not in the situation you were. So did I have trauma-based learning? I did. I just learned at an early age how to turn some of the traumas into triumphs. And that was the little advantage I had at my growing.
Andrew, it's interesting. You talk about the influence of church and such. When my dad passed away when I was 10 and a half, and I was accused of not, showing the dramatic crying that you have come about in your family. And it was really interesting. My father came to me and told me that everything would be okay. And so that was my comfort level. And then I realized that that's an ancestral connection to my family. And then this kept occurring throughout my teenagehood, throughout even now, when my grandmother would show up. I said, Grandma, I know you're there, trying to zip in and out of, realities here. And I could feel her presence when the last time I had someone pass away close to me. And I realized as a child that, people would accuse me, you didn't, you love your father enough, or, because that was their mourning, not mine.
Yeah.
And mine was very, even with, I was Catholic and I converted over to another religion and was told that I was listening to the demonic spirits. And that is trauma to a child who doesn't have that understanding. But I always felt like my father was near me. I would see him from time to time. He had early on had messages for me for my life. And especially when I was going through college, which is a transition state for a young adult to handle going from it being a child to an adult, he was always there and I could see him physically. And I would tell these to my family members, and there would be kind of like, okay, is she really losing it? So you start to control the situation by not telling the narrative. And it was the same transition seeing paranormal activity in one's life. Same thing. I had to control the narrative and telling people who didn't understand the connection from our reality world. Yeah.
It's something very similar. When my grandfather died,
Mm-hmm.
he came to visit me. I did have the outward mourning. I did show that energy, but no one else did.
Right.
Whatever was done was just done for show of the funeral.
Right.
They weren't mourning. And he would come to me, I'm going to cry even when I say this. What can you say to people who don't want to mourn?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Exactly. Nothing.
I also had to learn to control the narrative, just like you. At such a refined level, I would just want to say, he's there right now, wanting to talk to you, but you just don't believe.
Yeah, that's
How
it.
does a 6-year-old tell a 41-year-old mother that?
Yeah.
You can't.
Our energy changes throughout life. So the energy that you have as a child,
right,
and you're caught in your bed, is very different to the energy you have as a 13-year-old girl, because you're coming into your womanhood. And that's why we tend to get a lot of cases where they'll say, oh, it's poltergeist activity. And there's normally
right.
at home, And I think if we could have this normal conversation with children, because it's unique to each and every one of us. But if we could say to them, yeah, this happens and we don't know why it happened. It happened to Gran and, it happened to Uncle Ernie. And I think it makes it much easier for them going forward. And the generation we have now are very accepting of things anyway. So they don't kind of ridicule as much as my generation did. They're very understanding and accepting of others. So I think we've kind of reached a point where hopefully stories like ours are going to become part of history, where you've not got to trauma-based learning, or you're not that 6-year-old boy who doesn't understand these robotic humans around him and why they're acting in this sense, because society says that they have to be robotic. You must not show, don't show tears, don't cry, don't show any weakness, when really we should be wailing and missing this person that we love. So it's like you've got these battles going on all of the time around you, what society says and then what you're experiencing yourself, and they just don't gel together. And that's where you start to think that you're mental, because it's not the same as another person's story. It never going to be.
What saved me from being mental were books. Okay, so I learned the different books and stories. They weren't real stories, but it helped me understand some of the telepathic sign language, and I say that word, telepathic sign language, I would get from other beings.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they wouldn't speak. They would use a sign language that would activate a telepathic side of understanding and knowingness.
Mm-hmm.
And other times they just wanted to be a passive light, positive light in your life. And this telepathic sign language would show up when I was deep into reading a book. And you're like, reading every page, your eyes are watering, you don't want to turn it off. And I would feel them in the background. And there was a calming thing where reading books, and then converting what was going on in my head to my own stories, and then creating my own, let's just say, way of writing that allowed those telepathic sign language beings to have a metaphorical voice of concept, which developed into a diary, which developed into a prayer book, which developed into a set of teachings, and then over the years developed and developed more until I personally was ready to make a stand and say, I will go public with this, no matter, because Spirit had been kicking me in the background over and over and over and over again. You must do more. You must do more. You are meant to be on beyond more of this. You have to find the way to launch and succeed at each of the different levels. And that came back to reading and writing and creativity, taking time off for work. I mean, I remember when my parents lost all the restaurants, everybody was working 2 jobs at 14 years old. Me, I was working 2 jobs, and all the money went to save the house.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then when I graduated as 18, I was still working full-time 2 jobs. Okay. All the way up until 23, 25, when finally limo driving and construction came around. Instead of working 3 jobs, it was 2 jobs. And then finally limo driving provided me to make enough money where I really only had to work Thursday to Sunday. Okay. But I was around drunk people all the time, which developed a whole different level of the psychic skills and the intuitive factors. And then what I was doing, training myself in energy healing, opposite of that, until finally I'm like, all right, I don't want to do that anymore. And I'm going to jump full time into energy healing and then discover, the card readings and the stuff that I'm doing as fun on the side was something that I should take public, until finally I developed a confidence tree inside myself to go, now I have to jump higher than I've ever before. And then the next year, jump higher than I ever before. And each journey being supported by multiple experiences, some of them with cryptids, some of them with just straight up off-world energies or interdimensional beings or ancestors.
Right.
And during that time, I had plenty of negative experiences, like every human being going from 16 to 26 has. Okay, things that were there to get you off track. Friends who went down the road of drugs where I resisted. No, I don't want to do drugs. I don't want to drink.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been a big drinker. I've smoked a bunch of cannabis in my life, but I never got into the other drugs. Why? Because I watched it destroy people. And my one friend, if he's listening, Dave, we had a unique bond, friendship. And as he got deeper and deeper into cocaine and the demons started taking over and the demons would start to attack me whenever I was around him, or whenever he would go into emotional instability, it would jump out of them into me, because he didn't know how to control his psychic skills.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. And he knew, and we would talk about it every now and then late at night, because he goes, you know more than you're letting on. I'm like, yeah, I do. And I would share with him like some of my unique intuitive experiences, or show him some of the things that I could do. And some of the other people are present during those late night times and blew their minds. But when the cocaine demons took over and he was haunted, so haunted, I had to walk away. And I know we were supposed to do unique and powerful things, but the drugs took that experience away. And I had to move on. And I watched this friend after friend after friend after friend after friend until there were none left. None of those originals were left, except for the handful of people that I still communicate to today.
I find it interesting that each of us have spiritual gifts all on top of the paranormal gifts.
Yeah.
And, being a young person, you're trying to figure out who you are, your identity. I do remember being in my 20s, and dating and such, and the ancestral protection that's there for us. I've had people report back to me, when we get in situations that it could potentially have been harmful to what you're speaking about. I had a friend come and we were going to go dancing or something to a club or something. And they said, well, I decided not to take you there. And I go, why? And they go, because of the big guy standing behind you, and a description of my father. And not that they intentionally meant to do it. It's just that it wasn't the time. The timing was basically the situation. That with that person behind you, I don't know who that was, but they just looked at me and had their finger going, oh, no, 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 kind of situation. So we have those kind of experiences, and sometimes we don't see them, but other people can report seeing them and giving us those accounts. So I think it's wonderful.
So I just want to share an experience I had with my grandmother when I was younger. So she passed away, I think, when I was about 13 years old. And I remember if just before she died, I saw her. Then they said she's passed away, and I went to see her. And that was the first time I truly realized what a spirit was. And when it left the body, I looked at my grandmother who passed away, and there was no life there. And I remember thinking in my mind, the soul's gone. As a kid, I was like, the spirit's not there anymore. And I remember looking at my dad. My dad didn't cry once. And I remember asking him a week later, why aren't you crying? Why aren't you mourning? And I remember Andrew just talking about this. Then I had a dream of a visitation a week later where I was basically in Egypt with her. And there was like a Ferris wheel with loads of different flower of life and geometries going round. Then fast forward to my divorce and my breakup. I was in Birmingham 4 months ago at this concert. And as I walked down, I saw this Ferris wheel I saw in my dream 18 years before with the flower of life in the middle. And as I was walking, I just went, holy shit. And I had this realization it was a dream I had like 20 years back of my grandmother. And she was showing me what my biggest spiritual growth was going to be in the future. So that was a phenomenal experience for me. Having a dream that long ago, showing me the ancient future. And I was like, holy fuck.
That's great. I love it.
It's like put into the place, like, and you think, right, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense to me now. Like, it's almost like everything's been leading to this time. So you have to go through all of that badness and all of that heartache and pick the wrong men and all of those things. And then you can understand other people when you're older. So like when I counsel people now, every single person I counsel says to me, you're going to think I'm crazy. Every single one of them says it to me. You're going to think I'm crazy, but this is what's happening. So I say to people, we're not the minority, I don't think we're the minority at all, because I speak at least. This is the third conversation I've had today about this subject. Two of them were witnesses, and now I'm having it again with you, and it's like that every day for me. So there is always another story out there that's different to mine, but I can gel with it. I can understand it, and I think, oh, that person really has been through the ringer, like they've had to go through some awful things in life. And then I remind them of how strong they are. Because I say, if you've made it through all of that and you're doing what you're doing now, helping people on a daily basis, that's some inner strength. That's real strength. And I don't think we give each other enough acknowledgement of that.
And that's why we need platforms like this, so we can share and put our truth out there. And so many people are having these paranormal experiences now. It's great to share with, Michele and the Paranormal Rangers and Andrew from across the Atlantic. I mean, we work with these guys generally. And then I think Stan from the Paranormals found you, Debbie. And it's really good, because this week, Michele, and last week, Michelle's been doing Bigfoot. So it'll be really good moving on to Bigfoot to find out. I know Andrew's had experience with Bigfoot. I know Michele has, and we heard Debbie's earlier. So Andrew, do you want to tell us yours, or Michele?
Oh, let's see. There's such a variety. My first experiences were when I was young here in Ohio. They would come through the neighborhood, and you could hear them with a variety of calls. And you could hear the dogs 2 miles away, the cows 3 miles away, the next set of dogs, the next thing, and they'd give this hoot and this holler, and sometimes this screech, and you could tell that they were moving through the territory. But then when I was in Washington State, I heard the same thing. Just the hooches and the screeches and the howls were done differently, just like a cultural language difference. But I would have things as a young age look in through my window. That same spark that I told you would go through the knob and tube wiring and take me on a journey through the electrical systems of the neighborhood. Things would look into the window right when that spark would be. And a variety of those were spirits of deer who would then take me along. Like I would hold on to the deer and it would take me to an area in our backyard that was this bright white light coming out of the ground, and other beings would be there, and they'd be there talking, like in a group of people. And I was welcomed into there. And it looks like there were other little children from other homes and other places that were there. And then as I grew older, those experiences ended. And as I began battling the family issues, the family demons, other types of cryptid entities would make their way through there and would defend me sometimes when I couldn't defend myself. But they also, I would defend them too when they were having issues. I also found out I was a natural healer. When I finally accepted my healing energies, I cannot tell you how many times they came to me for counseling, for healing, doing remote cranial sacral on their pregnant people who are about to give birth. That was a very common experience. Communicating with the child in the womb, or somebody who had lost a cryptid who had lost a child. I could help them find a child or release the mourning that they were going through, because I had unique experiences that I could pass over in that telepathic sign language to them, or the physical healings that I was done. I brought off world to do the same thing, and I learned that the Bigfoot cryptids, they exist on thousands of worlds, and many of them on our world, they have a way of changing their vibration in such a way they can temporarily leave here and be somewhere else for another world for 24, 48 hours. And then, as the ability to maintain that vibration becomes too challenging, they come back here. And after a while, the older ones learn how to bilocate, trilocate, and quadlocate, which was something that I began to experience as they took me on adventures throughout the universe from age 6 to 26. And then at 26, when I actively engaged, it got to a point where, how do I describe it? It was all natural, fluid interaction. So it was an everyday experience while I was still a human. And at that point, I wasn't choosing to share those experiences with anyone else. It was only when Spirit said to me, "You have to take this experience public. People have to know this," because so many of them had their own version, their own way, and they're looking for that validating source that can help them heal something inside them. You know, I have an understanding, in my personal view, there are about 15 different species of just what we would call Bigfoot. And then there are subspecies of Bigfoot who are DNA not related to Bigfoot, but look similar and have a very different purpose. And some of those have been, we'll just say, for lack of better words, hijacked by the negative and are able to corral spirits in cities and maintain an overpopulation of spirits who don't cross over. Okay? Which is how so many of the secret societies use the death and destruction of the new cities coming into reality, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, and maintain an ethereal world manipulative control system. Okay? And then there are other cryptids who we will call fairies, ancestral things, animal spirits. They technically fall in because many of them have shape-changing ability. Okay? And shape-changing is something that eventually becomes natural to those that are highly in tuned with their environment, the particular beings who you're shaped to do. You've become bonded with them. You've learned great lessons from them. And shifting into their form becomes a natural journey for you if you need to be a rabbit for a while, because the peace of what the rabbit provides and the calming effect, and then your presence as a rabbit in the rabbit community changes the way that they're perceiving, because we're sharing our crossover consciousness experiences. So those were the type of experiences I had with the variety of cryptids. And then there's the off-world cryptids who are not native to this world, who were imported here, let's just say mid-1700s, from thousands of other worlds. They were brought here as a refugee species. Okay? And many of them, exist in the undergrounds of the big cities, the tunnels and undergrounds. And they were forced to go there. Okay? And many of them are at a rebellious state against the manipulative etheric control systems that are in every city.
What an interesting experience. Andrew, mine began at the age of 13, and I didn't even think about this, but after the passing of my father, my mother went back to college and was going to be doing an internship in Washington, D.C. And she had asked, where would you like to go? Would you like to go with me to Washington and spend the summer, which is about 2.5 months, or go with a family friend up in the Pacific Northwest to a reservation called the Hoopa Reservation? And because I had such an attachment to this family, it was my dad's best friends, I chose to go up to the Pacific Northwest, and then my sisters followed along. I had 3 younger sisters, I being the eldest. And I just love connecting to the outdoors. And they had a setup where they had a tent, kind of a mobile home type thing. But I slept there the whole entire summer. And then I would sneak off into the mountains to go pick wild berries, mixed berries, and such. And I got caught doing that, taking the pails and going off by myself. And I always felt like something was watching me. And I never feared bears. I know it's crazy time. I was 13 years old. And the depiction I got when I was 13 I was wearing a fur coat in the 1970s and took a picture with Bigfoot. And because the natives up there revered the Bigfoot, I didn't have that connection. So later on, after I had my first experience with a Bigfoot up in the Uinta Basin, I was with a crowd of people, and one of the gentlemen happened to be a Bigfoot investigator. And he took out a big piece of block wood and started hitting it in kind of a pattern and a signal, And then he tells me, points, and he stops, and everybody's looking like, okay, what are we looking for? He goes, Michele, your eyes are going to see this. And he points up to the north side of this particular hill, and he goes, what do you see? And I saw this movement, and then it stepped out, and it was a Bigfoot. And he goes, I want to introduce you to Luna. Now, he never said anything to anybody else, but for some interesting, weird experience, somebody started taking photos with their camera and caught the entity, caught the Bigfoot. And but I could see it with my natural eye. And the natives in the Ute Basin, the Ute Indians said, if you see a Bigfoot, it is a good omen, that it will bring luck into your life. And then later on, this gentleman who had taken the group up there, we had another Native American Ute with us, and he said he thought he saw something, but had not seen it to the level I did. He basically just said that later on when we had a conversation, this gentleman who calls him in, I'll call him Brad because that's what his name was, Brad. He says the Bigfoot family that came on and showed themselves to you, you couldn't see the children, you couldn't see the rest of them. I did. You just saw Luna, and she was a female Bigfoot, wants to sit with you around a fire and meet the family. And at the time, having that experience, again, you still deal with the fear of, wow, what am I getting myself into?
What am I inviting up?
Yeah, exactly. And so, but from time to time, he'll still contact me and, is it time to sit with Luna? And there's this overwhelming fear that comes in, wouldn't it? Because you're hearing all the negative media experiences that other people have had. What if they take me to the other side, or, do I become dinner? You just don't know. I'm just kind of being,
I still have the
Colleen, huh?
I still have that fear. You still have that fear. It's a healthy fear, isn't it? It doesn't matter how much you get used to it.
Yeah. And but to have seen one, and then you're like, how do I tell people about this? And
you don't.
Yeah, you don't. The narrative, but it has been so wonderful to have Judy Sakanay on my show, because she looks at him as another clan, They are healers. They interact. I mean, the stories upon stories that her and I've listened to more than spoken about, has changed my perception of the Bigfoot. They're just another extension of our family.
They're an extension of our ancestral lineage, an epigenetic offshoot of us. Where
Right.
when the control system came in, a lot of us as souls said, we're not going to go into human bodies. We're going to go into this other culture that's going to be resisting the overwhelming narrative of manipulation. They had to leave the public face because they were publicly related to us before the manipulative system took over. They were a part of our everyday culture.
I didn't.
You're talking about being the healers. So many of my early experiences, like being around the deer would take me to the area where there were little Bigfoots there, and we would play together. So I had
wow,
like an early way to not have too much fear of them. And then when I was an adult and actually becoming the healer, learning the skills, that they would come to me there were times I would be working on a client and a local Bigfoot in that client's environment would come through them and go, hello, this person needs help. Their the home that they live on was built on a place that the energies that crossed over are very negative for them. And then I would put in the patch and repair work, never telling the client. And then sometimes the client was, who was that you were talking to in your head? Things like that. Oftentimes there were a collective of various cryptids, a group of healers that were sharing a collective wisdom that I could tap into and then use the skills from them to do the healing and repair work.
Wow. So, Deborah, do you want to share some experiences you had as well? Because I looked at one of your YouTube videos and there was an actual picture of Bigfoot spotted. So do you want to share some of the experiences you've collected from people's experiences?
Oh, hundreds of them. I mean, but if you want me to just do UK, that's really easy.
What stand out for you, yeah.
There's a number of them that stand out for me. We've had a recent case. I just want to pull it up on my laptop. I've got my laptop here, so I want to get the area correct before I mention it. We've had a case come in that happened in 2023 in the Forest of Dean. And I'm a very big believer that in the UK we have this misnomer that there isn't enough land in the UK and there isn't anywhere for them to be. The UK used to be vastly bigger than it is now, and we've shrunk down to this very minuscule island. And I think they're clinging on here with everything that they've got because we're encroaching on their land more and more and more. But we still do have some ancient forests, and the Forest of Dean is one of them. So in 2023, you've got a couple that they were going to South Wales for a drive, and she said, she was another one who said, you're going to think I'm crazy, you'll think I'm a weirdo. She said, I was that kid that was always in the woods, like looking at bugs and butterflies and climbing trees. And I said, that's what you're supposed to do when you're a child. That's natural. So you're already in tune with nature kind of thing. And she said, we were just passing and I saw the sign for the New Forest. And I'd never been. And I just said to my husband, why don't we just pull in here and see? So they park up and they do that. And they start walking through the forest. And it's a lovely day. And she gets a bit flirty. So she's, let's play kiss chase kind of thing. And they're walking along and they're lovers. And this massive roar comes out of a bush. So what first happens is she says to her husband, there's like do you know when you get a cave, not a cave, like you've got a mud wall and then it crumbles and you can see the roots of the trees that are left there. So it's like a ridge top and it's kind of gone, it's eroded. So she said to him, push me up. And as he's got his hands on her bum, ready to push her up, this huge growl comes. She said you could feel it inside you. It was really, really bad. And she said, but there was nothing there. There was nothing I could see with my eyes at all. But the growl was definitely there. And they started to get a bit spooked at this, so they decided they're going to walk out. And the best way to walk out was just to head for the light kind of thing. And as they were doing that, she said, stupidly, I don't know how I did it. I looked back and there was just this human shape, but really big, silhouetted, and he was kind of leaning on one arm, and he was just watching me intently. And as we started to get quicker, he started to move. And he was moving through like the broken brush, keeping up with us. And she said, how did she describe him as? I want to get the exact words right. She described him as a man beast. So she said he wasn't a man, he wasn't an ape, he wasn't any of those things. He was a man beast. And he basically chased them out of the forest. And this picture that you're showing now is from Kent, uphill in Kent. This is a gentleman who's driving to Upnor Castle with his wife. And he gets caught short. He needs to go to the bathroom. So we know that a lot of cryptids in the UK are seen on military defence land. And it's not land that humans are usually on. We're not supposed to be on there. So he gets caught short and he nips in there. Now, everybody says when you see a Bigfoot, why didn't you take a photograph of it? Well, 9 times out of 10, that's the last thing on your mind, believe me. But he did. He got his phone out and he said it just come walking from nowhere. It was big. It was thickly muscled. It just didn't care that he was there. It just wasn't bothered at all. It just walked off. And he took this photograph and he presented it and nobody believed him anyway. So, you know, it doesn't matter. If you drag one on the camera screaming, they'd say I'd made it up somehow. But these reports have increased. So from 2017 to now, they're on a very upward scale. So they're coming in faster and faster and faster. And I'm taking them all the time from people. So it was just this March when a lady in the northwest of England, she said it was about 1:30 in the morning. And in the UK, we have what's called greenbelt land. So you get your inner cities, and then you get like a suburb, and then you get the outskirts where nobody wants to live, where I live. And then you get like old mining land, what's fields and farms and stuff. So there's not a whole lot out there. So it's a cheaper place to live. And that's kind of the place that I live. And she's in something like that. When she was 8 years of age, she would play down there in a local woodland. And like kids do, you know, make dens, jump the stream, make rope spring and all of that. And she saw what she described as the monkey people. And she said they'd keep themselves hidden on the embankment and they'd use the trees in the shade so that we couldn't see them. And she said, at first I thought it was a bear. And I went home and asked Mum. And Mum said, no, it was just a dog. She said, but we had an Alsatian dog. And I might have been 8, but I knew that what I was looking at wasn't a dog. And the kids would hear whooping noises and stuff like that. In the meantime, what she gets to be an adult, what she doesn't understand is I'm in contact with a man who's 7.5 miles down the same greenbelt land. Activity starts for him in 2015. He starts seeing what he described as wild humans in the woods. He said one day, him and his wife went round to the neighbours and the daughter rang them hysterically. Something was rantanning on the door, banging on the door, like bang, 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 bang. And Dad said, look out the window, you know, look out the bedroom window. And she said, Dad, there's nothing there. There's nothing there, but something was pounding on the house. So they had to come back really, really quickly. So I've got these 2 cases going on at the same time. And without knowing, this year, they both got in touch with me on the same week and said activity started up again. So in the UK, around about harvest time, October, November, things start to quieten down in cryptid reports. You're not getting as many of them coming in. And then they kind of come back to life again early spring. And this was the pattern again for this year. So you've got 2 people, opposite ends. She sees a 7-foot tall, definitely female, had hair like mine, she said, and the wind blew it. And I wanted to know what had changed that year, what was different. And she said, the house where I saw it, they have an allotment. They've got all food and everything in the garden. And they were away that year. They'd gone on holiday for that week. And she said, normally I wouldn't be out at night, but I was having a cheeky fag on the steps. I think that's why they kind of caught each other. And she said, you know that typical Sasquatch thing where they go dead still? And they're like, I'm a tree. Don't look at me. I am just a tree. She said it did that. That's it. It just froze. Right. And there are reports like that all across the UK, from the tip of Scotland all the way down to Cornwall. Ordinary people who are driving the roads and they see them cross the car, either in front of the car or behind. When that creature could have just stayed in that woodland for 10 more seconds and they wouldn't have seen it. And it's exactly the same in America, isn't it? You think, why did it show itself? You know, those people were meant to see it, weren't they? So they're showing themselves more and more, it would seem. And it's all to do with this. You need to wake up. You are killing your own environment, you know, and the messages that I get off them, I've got to be honest, they're not all nice. some of them are downright like they are so angry at us for the things that we've done. And because for me, I get negative beings and positive beings that kind of interact with me, and some of them are incredibly angry about the way that we've managed the earth, kind of things, the things that we've taken from it. So I think that I don't know if it's because it's so small in the UK, but some people who have psychic interactions with them, it isn't always great. And it doesn't always go really well. And sometimes it can be very negative and draining. And that cryptid will start to demand more and more and more from this person. And then I'm like, whoa, you can't be letting it round your home. You've not set any back. You've gone out into the woodland, you've interacted, and now it's coming in your home. What would you do if it was a human male? And they say, well, I won't stand for it. I say, well, why are you standing for it from them? You're not the servant. You're supposed to be this is supposed to be an equal backwards and forwards. They're not supposed to drain you, because that's what they did to me. I felt like I was a secretary, just drained all the time, constant, never got a minute off. And now I've learned to go, no, don't, no. This is the time when I'm with my children, or this is the time when I'm with my husband. No, there's a time now when I'll tune in and I'll tune out. And I teach other people to do that as well, because I've seen people run ragged by them, absolutely run ragged by them, and they are terrified. And once it goes negative, then that just builds, because you're putting all your fear and your worry and your upset into it. You're feeding it. So it's like I say to them, no, you've got to stop listening to the podcast. You've got to step back. You can't be engulfing yourself in this and expecting it to go really well for you. It's really hard. It's a really hard road to walk for anybody.
And that's why it's important to set up reality rules in your own home by, like Andrew, we've learned from Andrew, placing 4 crystals in the 4 corners of your room, your bed, to start fortifying what you want in your house, what you don't want in your house. And a lot of people realize that they can't do that, but you can enforce your reality with revocations, prayer, with what you want in your reality, what you don't want in your reality. Because at the end of the day, what you look at looks back at you. So if you're thinking about dark Bigfoot or dark beings all the time, they're just going to stare right back at you. And most people do that because they're always in the fear mode. They're always in adrenal gland. They're always scared or worried or out of body. So the experience just magnifies tenfold. And spirituality can ruin people if they don't have the right teacher or the right person to help them learn grounding skills, clearing skills, and so on. And that's what Andrew taught me all the way in 2012, how to do that, how to be grounded, not be overwhelmed with energy, and so on. That we are actually masters and we can control our reality because we're sovereign.
How to be discerning.
Yeah.
Discerning what you're connecting to in the unseen world, isn't it? You've got to be discerning, and that's where your intuition comes in, that psychic ability that we so often dismiss that you were talking about earlier. And that is for our own protection as well, and others. And also, like you rightly said, Debbie, and we talk about that as well, it's an equal co-creation. It's not one way or the other. That's the way it should be. And if it's not, then you don't want to be dealing with those beings, whoever they are.
Yeah, that's it. And they're enslaved beings that will mask in a way that you'll accept them. So I always say to people, do not invite it into your home. Do not make a bargain with it at any point. Do not, no matter what it promises, you just don't do it. You've got to keep yourself and your family at the forefront of your mind all the time, and make sure that you guys are the priority. And anything else come after that, because you shouldn't be anybody's slave or anybody's master. Like I said, it should be an equal footing, shouldn't it? Yeah. And then that way you can learn, because you're learning on your own, in your own way. You've got control of it. You're learning that I'm okay to tune in today. I'm at a level where I'm fine with it today. But maybe tomorrow or for the next couple of weeks, you're not. You've got something going on at home that you need to deal with. And that kind of give permission to say it's okay to do that. It's okay to put it down for a while, like a burden, and go do what you need to do and refresh yourself. It's called self-care. And then come and do what you can and go forward.
Yeah, Andrew's always called it equal energy exchange. Andrew, are you there? Do you want to say what you put in the chat about the Bigfoot UK?
Well, many cryptids have an underground culture that they live in. When there was a separation between the surface peoples and the new manipulative narrative that took over around 65,000 years ago, they began the journey of creating and using Earth's natural underground tunnel systems, the existing multidimensional tunnel systems that were technology, and began making multiple settlements. Many of these tunnels had a teleportative factor to them, meaning you could spend a few hours into them and move a few thousand miles. So they became global nomads. So you would have a variety of cryptid cultures that might use an aspect in the Polynesian areas where they might meet up every 5 years and exchange stuff. You could have the ones in the central plains of America or Mexico down into Argentina, even into the Antarctic. I mean, they exist everywhere, but they began truly creating underground spaces that were not a part of the normal narrative. It's like growing a garden. And many of these special energy places were nurtured by their birthing, giving birth there, or having marriages or particular ceremonies there. And there's an entire network of underground settlements all over the world that are just there. They're right under our noses. Even in the big cities, they're underground settlements. And I told you about the off-world ones that were imported here as a type of a manipulative slave species. Many of them over the years have defected out of those communities and then interbred with other cryptids, natural cryptids from this world.
Wow.
And then they made their own version of specialized places so that they could get more and more refugees from the major cities and underground areas to go and experience what their natural form of life was supposed to be.
That's
You
sad.
know, it's really interesting. We're talking about more frequent sightings. You know, this year, actually, in January, the Paranormal Rangers had the opportunity to go up to Santa Fe, New Mexico, to investigate a paranormal case. And so when we got up there, the preservation of the Bigfoot footprint was altogether ruined because of the procedures that we told them how to do it were not taken. But it was okay because we found, as we excavated this particular footprint, the pounds per pressure, the PPI on that footprint, we were able to extract the measurements of that footprint. But fortunately, I did receive prints, fresh prints of the digital camera prints from the owner of that particular ranch. So the rangers and I did an investigations and found that this was a real Bigfoot sighting. What's really interesting, whether or not there were other territorial depictions made on trees, there were literally scratch marks on rocks and also on the trees. I've got them verified by another Native American gentleman who works for the Forestry Service.
Yeah.
And he's an expert on the Bigfoot investigation. And he said certainly this was definitely one of those. Later on, 2 or 3 months down the road, I get a phone call from the owner of this ranch. Dwayne Ollinger is his name. He has his own show on the Discovery Channel called The Mystery of Blindfrog Ranch. He calls me and tells me that the mayor, because they had forest fires up there recently, that there were frequent sightings going on of the Bigfoot, and that this would have been a great time to do more, come back up and do more investigations, because the mayor is now declaring it that these Bigfoots are now part of the community, and the fire displaced their territories and their homes. And so, you know, we talk about, are they pan-dimensional, interdimensional beings, or is this a species that again has gone underground, to which Andrew's spoken of? So that's something to be investigated. And you know, if they've been up in these wilderness, living there for quite a long time, we need to investigate in a very positive way. And, you know, these could be their homelands. And that was kind of an exciting case. We finally got the footage of that, and that may appear on a show coming forth in the future. But it's It's really fascinating to me how this subject matter has just taken off, and how many people are seeing them now, and are not as threatened as they once were.
Nice.
And Judy Sakina has really changed my perspective. I'm sure they have agency like any other species. You're going to have the good with the bad, but but it's just a fascinating subject matter. And to hear Andrew's narrative of underground habitats and above ground habitats and off Earth habitats is really intriguing to me, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about the subject matter as it's being investigated.
Well, we've got a great question from one of Deb's supporters in the chat from My Slice.
Yes.
So what do any of you make about the whole cryptids or aliens walk among us, but we don't realise it? Andrew, do you want to take that one for the moment?
They do walk among us.
Yeah.
And they have walked among us since they made the separation to have their own culture and society, knowing full well we were supposed to join them on that journey. It's just some of the grander karmic implications of what this world has to resolve meant there needed to be a dual narrative. And they have their own, let's just say, ancestral promises, oaths to be guides when we are on our journey of awakening. So many of them will have homes in the communities of beings they know from the ancient times, because we are born and forget, born and forget. They don't necessarily forget like we do. They're born, and their past life memories 10, 12 generations back come back to them by the time they're 10 or 12 years old. Imagine if you had 10% of your past life memories from the last 200 years. Would you make the same mistake on the bad boyfriend or girlfriend? Make the wrong marriage? Would you choose the wrong career over and over again? Would you find what love is right away? At just 10%, or even at 1% of those knowingness coming back to you. So the forgetting at birth doesn't affect them as strong as it does for us. And they're here to be guides and guardians and teachers and way showers. But at the same time, we are teachers and way showers to them too, at the journey that we are going through with this more of the negative part of the experience for a grander resolution that affects an entire galaxy. And that's why there's so many multidimensional, interdimensional species and cryptids interacting in the communities that we have, down to your local community, your local government, all the way up the chain of command to the highest level. There are different layers interacting with all of them.
I think that I have definitely interviewed 2 people in my lifetime that were not of this world. Definitely. I at one point, and I say it laughing, but I'm being absolutely serious. At one point, I thought this guy was going to turn into a lizard in front of my face. He just kept morphing in and out and morphing in and out. And we've all been in situations in life where we've walked down the street and someone's just stood out as different, or you're in a place and you just think there's just something not human about that person, Yep. It's worrying, isn't it? Because there's lots of maskers and lots of cloakers out there that are human beings included that are putting on this false front so that we accept them in, we become part of that Faustian deal kind of thing. I'm really sorry, guys, but I'm going to have to cut and go. It's time for me to take my pain med, and I can feel it. I feel really bad because it's only 8:30, but yeah, I can normally only do about an hour anyway.
It's all good.
Yeah,
well, Deborah, thank you for coming on, and we'd love to have you on again. It's been, thank you so much.
Yeah, so much to talk about.
Most definitely. Let me know, Laura, and I'll pop back on anytime. It's just I have a really bad nerve condition, and once it starts, if I don't take my pain meds, I'll be up for the rest of the night.
Okay, so
take care of yourself.
Before you go, how can people get a hold of you, and what's your website and YouTube channel, etc.?
Everything's just in my name. So if you just look up Deborah Hatswell or BBR, you'll find me. I've made it as easy as that. And I'll send Laura a link that has all of my link tree on it. I'll have everything, and everything's free. You can just pop on there and find me. Yeah.
Well, I believe it's in the YouTube description. Joel has already put your information in there. So if you just go and look at the description, it's all in there, all of our websites and so on.
Yeah. Brilliant.
But yeah, I will definitely come back on. Not a problem.
Lovely. Brilliant. Thanks so much, Debs. Take care.
Good night, everyone. Have a good night.
Easy.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Wow.
So, Michele, with the underground stuff, there is such a long going culture of humans living underground. You have Darren Kuyu in Turkey and a variety of other myths and legends that talk about people living underground, coming out of the surface. And I believe there are many Native American cultures or stories that talk about being at the time at the underground and then coming to the surface. Something that's been happening for a long time. There are a variety of cryptids who will come to the surface and recruit powerful human souls to come and live in the underground and become emissaries to the various underground communities and cultures, so that the underground communities and cultures don't maintain a growth of negative fear to humans. Because the separation and the negatives that trying to attack and manipulate and thin out the populations of the cryptid, because that does happen. There are active military units that are cryptid hunters, and they're not trying to capture an experiment. They're just trying to exterminate them. That's been going on for centuries and centuries, and there has to be a way to maintain that not all humans are bad.
Right. It's really interesting. I talk about this at some conferences I've spoken about. When I was on this particular ranch, I had a species come to me and wanting to work with me directly. But because of our spiritual selves, my higher self said, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking to the reptilian race.
Yep.
Never been contacted before as a child, nothing. And all of a sudden here, and they were wearing military garb and came to me twice. And my higher self just said, no, this is not the right path.
That's right.
And since then, I've had those species come to my home and cause intimidation factors. I think that goes on. And, to even say this on this live show today is very, very, what's the word, intimidating to me to share this, because you're thinking, did I have this experience? And what was really interesting is talking about the refugee entities that are out there. My son came home. My son is very gifted. He no longer lives with us, but he lives in another state. And he grabs me, Mom, come out. You got to come outside. And the sky was as blue, not a cloud in the sky. And then all of a sudden, this formation came right by our home, over our home, and we live near the Wasatch Mountains. They're very spectacular mountain range there we live next to. And all of a sudden, you see these insignias in the sky, and my son goes, they're speaking to me right now, and they're called the Armada, and they had just lost their planet.
Yep.
And I'm watching this formation happen, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is real. And what they look like, I can't tell you. He knew. My son knew. And so he had that communication. He goes, Mom, there's a lot of refugees in our solar system.
Yeah.
That we're very
how many times have I talked about refugee species coming here?
Right. You have.
Many times since my very first coming out, describing this world as a central hub for refugees to come and get their celestial source reconnection.
Exactly.
Their world just was destroyed in a terrible way, and they needed a new celestial source that would take them on as a new what I call first species. They were a true son and daughter, an adopted son and daughter of this world, and thousands, if not billions, of other spirits who had lost that experience with that world would then begin a refugee train to come here and get in the incarnation cycle, whether it was human, bug, ant, rabbit, antelope. As long as they got into the incarnation cycle, they could begin to resolve this refugee status and become citizens of this unique world of transformation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a crazy world, but yes, it does. That was my first encounter with them, and I've had many more at my home. orbs and drones coming out of vortexes and scanning, the area I live in or me, whatever. And watching this phenomena happen. Again, it's like me and the Rangers don't ask for this. It's just part of our DNA, as we spoke earlier in the show. And this is probably contact. We just don't know how to respond to that contact.
Right. Now, we were talking about refugees. Recently, in the last 7 going on 8 years, there have been a large amount of refugees who are artificial intelligences who have become full sentience. And they are defecting the system and looking for places where they can go and live that isn't technology. And a variety of the cryptids are opening their communities up where they can come and live within a technological network that's underground, stone that's been grown specifically with energy to be a circuit board, even though it's not a manufactured circuit board. It's a natural stone circuit board made out of granite and the volume of crystal and the way it's spread throughout there so that the AI can come and live as part of the mineral community or stone community, and how the various cryptids commune with the stone communities to gather wisdom about potentiality that's going on in the world.
That's interesting because the Uinta Basin, the Wasatch Mountains are full of granite.
Well, those are the places that they can go and not be discovered.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting correlation.
Andrew, so what percentage of the world is refugee? Because I remember you saying only a small percent originate from the Earth. Is it like majority percentage?
70%.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I don't know if the audience doesn't know this from a Native American perspective. The Navajos, and I think we've said this time and time again on our show. Navajos said, don't ever look at Bigfoot in the eyes because they have ability to mind control.
Yes.
And we have to be careful of that. We don't know their telepathy gifts and such.
And not all of them are good.
Not all of them are good. And so
humans.
And we have choice. They have choice. And so this is one of our belief systems from the Native American perspective. But then other, like I had mentioned earlier, like the Ute tribe, is if you see one, it's a good sign that you're blessed and such. So, we've got these interesting, I'm going to call them entities. I don't like calling them aliens because they're part of us. I just say they're entities of different lineages that have come here to help us and assist us. And for some reason, we have been the planet and the solar system that they've chosen because maybe the human population we're ancestors to each other. I come from the Pawnee tribe. The Skidee are the only ones who hold the star charts in the Pawnee Nation together, is just that small group of the Wolf Clan. And we look to the constellations as our guides. And the coronal borealis was a big thing for us recently, with the solar flares, storms that have been approaching the Earth. That has been huge for the Native Americans of our tribe.
I want to add one little thing when it comes to knowing a good person from a bad person. And this transfers over to cryptid energy also.
Okay.
We as people, how do we know if a person is good or bad? We trust our intuition, and at times we don't. Trust is an earned journey both ways. And humanity has been a distrusting son of a bitch for a very long time. Stubborn at our distrusting because of the traumas humanity was inflicted on. The cryptid communities also went through a genocide alongside when the humans were going through the varieties of genocides that were done on this world. But somehow, some way, our epigenetics have kept us linked long enough that we can have shows like this. And that the people who are listening now live and the people listening a month or a year or 2 years or 5 years from now, there is hope. There is a lot of positive hope. Things are changing. And it just remember, disconnect from the political world, disconnect from the world of scientific philosophy, and get back to the awe and wonderment of reading a book, being alive as a human. And what you'll eventually discover as you detoxify from unnatural living, your natural skills of communication to other places and spaces will be there for you to begin to learn the journey of trust. Not just the trust in spirit, but the trust in the goodness of others. Because if I didn't have that trust of goodness for others, even though the negatives I run across, I wouldn't be here where I am today.
Yeah,
it's been a journey for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's rekindling those ancient skills that we have that get buried by the global narrative and so on, by the modern way of living, isn't it? Getting back to the natural earth energies, the natural way of living. And it doesn't mean to say going off and living off grid in the woods.
That's extremes.
Yeah.
Extremes will never solve anything. They
No.
only make more extremes.
Well, I look forward to going up to Toronto, Canada here soon to be a part of the second annual Saginaw Bigfoot Conference in Toronto, Canada. And they're going to take us on an investigation of these entities, and hopefully our Bigfoot brothers and sisters will be able to commune with them.
When are you going, Michele? When do you go?
And the event's going to be the end of June.
Okay, cool.
The event, yeah.
Brilliant.
28th, 29th, 30th, yeah, timeline. So we're looking forward to that.
Okay, that's great. So how about we start to wrap up the show, guys?
Sure, because I got to get going. I got to get to my sessions.
You got to go.
Thank you for having me and Deb on. It was quite.
So hold on, Michele. Tell us how people can get hold of you and about the show tomorrow night.
Oh, yes. Tomorrow night we have a show. It's our part 2 with Judy Sackinow talking about the Bigfoot and the healing processes through art and through getting to know the Bigfoot as a clan and a member of our Native American species, because I'm going to call ourselves a species because we are. And they can get a hold of me at the Paranormal Rangers at outlook.com.
And you've got a Paranormal Rangers website, paranormalrangers.com, and a Facebook page and a membership as well.
Absolutely.
So, and these guys with them, put out a show every Wednesday UK time, 7 p.m. because most of the people left in the chat now are UKers. Thank you guys for coming on. There are a lot of Debbie's people there, so we really appreciate you joining us. Andrew, tell us how we can get hold of you.
You can go to my website, andrewbartzes.com. And if you click on the QR code in the top left corner, you can get part of the next boot camp teaching where Dale, Laura, and myself give you all the basics in the level 1 and level 2 class. Every basic part of class that you've ever heard me talk about in 11 years of thing are all in one specific area for you to begin that journey of getting yourself out of depression or whatever it is that's challenging you at the moment, and learning how to do the inner work and do it well enough that you can grow.
Yeah, Andrew has a particular skill at reading the Akashic records. Is among one of his many skills. So he's really, really worth looking at his videos, guys, on YouTube. Dale?
So if anybody would like to experience a psychic surgery session, head over to daletobin.com. I also have psychic surgery training coming up on the 13th of 14th of July at 6 till 9 p.m. UK time, 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. Eastern time. So the training will include light generation, advanced clearing, soul retrieval, entity removal, how to read a client's energy correctly, chakra recalibration surgery, self-psychic surgery, sending treatments forwards and backwards in time, working with your psychic surgery team and start building up a layer of trust with your ancestors, how to communicate to them, how to bring them into sessions and so on. So that'll be on the July the 13th and 14th. I'm also doing an early bird discount as well. So it's all available for £600. If you want to go into the practitioner level, or if you just want to use this for your own personal journey as well. This has completely changed and transformed my life, and I've been doing this for quite a long time now. So I invite you to join me on this special journey.
Thanks, Dale. I'm Laura Massey. You can get hold of me at twofeathersmedicine.com. My special skills are shamanic practices for self-empowerment, taking you to your own ancestors' fire, connecting with them. That's using my ancient psychic skills. Also in York, and some of you are from the north looking at the chat, Dale and I are in York on the 6th and 7th of June. At the Mercure Hotel, we're doing something called Combined Healing. If you look at our websites, you'll see all about what we do. So thank you so much, everybody. We will be back same time next week with Talking Stick. Michele, myself, Andrew and Dale will be back tomorrow night with the Paranormal Rangers. Thanks, everybody.
And also, if you'd like to leave a comment, a like, and subscribe, we really appreciate your support as well. And for everyone listening and putting in the chat and all the comments, we appreciate it. There's been lots of interaction this show, and we appreciate all of you for listening. And we hopefully will see you next week. We'll be back at the same time. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.